Okay. So now I'm conscious. You know, you become conscious when, when you're being recorded. Okay, all right. So that's our lesson still. We actually tackled a few of them already. So I'm gonna review the first one we talked about was reasons. As I said, if you have outlines, sit with those who don't. Okay, so you can share them. Yeah, it's on Group Me. Okay, so Angie, you have Group Me. You can share it to both of them. Okay. So we talked about reasons for feeling worthless and insignificant. Okay, because as I said, many people, when you talk about worthlessness, it talks about feeling that we are not important, feeling that we're not valuable, feeling that we're not making an impact. Talk about insignificance, we feel like we're useless. It's like the world could move on without us. Okay, if we're not here, that's the reason why a lot of people take their lives because they feel like, what am I here for? It's a question of purpose, question that the Bible actually answers. The world doesn't have an answer for. Even the most intelligent, the intelligentsia, even the people who are supposed to be in the field of science. When I say that, I wanna actually qualify that. I want to say people in the field of atheistic science, okay? Because there is theistic science. Not all scientists are atheists. Well, in fact, I heard a scientist, a Christian scientist, say that majority of scientists are actually theists. They believe there is a God, except that the noisier bunch are those who are disbelievers, unbelievers to God or in God. Okay, so but one of the most important difference that we have as compared to, for example, people who don't have God or who don't believe in the existence of God is the origination of man, the origination of creation. What was the origin? Because origin speaks about why we created in the first place. Why begin in the first place? Why do we begin something? Why do we start something? Because you want to accomplish something. And if you want to accomplish something, it talks about what? Purpose. So when we were created, if you don't believe, or people who don't believe in God, then you have a hard time answering the question of purpose. That's the reason why a lot of people, or for example, atheistic people, we love them. This is not a criticism against them, but it just happens that they haven't come up having that position. It'll be very difficult for you to come up with an answer to origin and destiny. Why were you created? What happens after we die? What is your answer? Okay, but us as believers, we're very different because we know that we were created according to the image of God with a purpose. Okay, am I not loud enough? Okay, we were created in the image of God. I probably have to say it that way. It gets louder. Okay, we're created in the image of God with a purpose. Before we were created, God already called us. He already has a purpose for us. And that phenomenon or that truth is real even in our day-to-day experience. How do you know that? Ford Motors or whatever car, GM or Toyota, before they create a car, they already have an end in their mind. They've already formulated everything. They already have designed it. They know the measurements. They know how fast it's going to go. They know what kind of form it's going to have. They know what kind of shape. They know the size it's going to have. Everything has been planned before they even start the first step of manufacturing. Right? That's how God saw you and me. The reason why you and I were created is because He already has a need that He needs answered. We have a purpose. We're here to help the world. We're here to help people. We're here to help creation. So don't ever buy into that. So we're talking about that worth and significance. Okay, you are important. And I want you to say to each other right now, you are important. Okay. Yeah, you're important. You matter. Tell them you matter. Okay. So, okay. And at times I always say this. It's very important that we remind each other of that. because a lot of times, because people are imperfect, we really, a lot of people are really not good at making them feel, as in making other people feel important, right? Because a lot of people are struggling with their own worth and own significance. It's like because of that, it's very difficult for a lot of people to think outside of themselves. So I'm sorry to say the reason why, although we know that innately or intrinsically have that knowledge in our minds that I matter, I'm important, I am worth something, I'm significant. A lot of times, because the people around us and our surroundings, our environment, do not necessarily agree with their actions with that proposition, we feel like we are not important. Like even in our own home. So many times have I said this during the message? A lot of times there are many people, especially parents, there are many people who are made to feel like they're like appliances at home. What do you mean by that? They're like refrigerators or a flat iron or an electric fan or television. What do you mean by that, Pastor? You only get acknowledged when you are needed. But if they don't need you, then they forget you. You're like a display. You're like an appliance. Like you really don't matter, right? So there are many factors in our world that make you feel that way. That's why it's important that we study this. And the Bible has a lot to say regarding this. To affirm that you really are. Man, the very fact that we were created in God's image, that tells a lot. Right? But there's no greater image than God himself. And he created us no lower than the best image there ever is, and that's God. That speaks volumes already. All right, so let me move on. So there are reasons, though, for feeling worthless and insignificant. We're not going to go elaborate on that because we've spent significant amount of time on these things. The first one is lack of security. Lack of security. We feel insecure because probably we're lost to something, we don't belong to something, we got kicked out, we're not being accepted to a certain group or clique, or we don't find our niche or any of those. Okay, so lack of security. Okay, we feel like we're always in danger. We feel like we could be attacked anytime by anybody and nobody's there to help us. We don't have a support group. We don't have anybody. Okay, we're lost. We don't know where to go. Like that could be like talking about our personal purpose, that we don't know what our purpose is. Okay, that's why we feel insecure, or we don't have people around us where someone could provide that assurance that you're okay. Okay, or we may have people, but they're not helping. They're not helpful as to telling you that, or as to making us feel that we are significant or worth, people who are of worth. Okay, the next one. The first one is lack of security. The second thing we talked about was lack of usefulness. Okay, remember the parable we talked about, lack of security, what parable it was? It was a parable of the lost sheep. A lost sheep, you will be insecure if you're a lost sheep, all alone out there. There are wolves around, there are lions around. In the world we will live in, that's what Jesus told us we are. What is that? You're a sheep being sent out to among wolves. Okay, so that's something. Okay, so the second one is the second parable. Yes.
Can I project for the outline for those?
Sure.
I
You can.
just need sharing capabilities.
Oh, okay.
Co-host.
Where are you? Where are you at? Okay, Belle.
Bell. She's in the mountains.
There you go. All right. So the next one is lack of usefulness. So how many of you remember the parable? That right after the parable of the lost sheep, we have this next parable, a short one, but it does refer to this. Anybody? It's a parable of the lost coin.
Yes.
Parable of the lost coin. Remember, you have a coin that may be made of gold, like coins before were actually made of precious metals, right? You have a coin that's, let's say, for example, really made of gold. But if you can't find that coin, it's useless. Okay, so the reason why many of us feel insignificant is because of that feeling that, especially if a person still do not know the Lord, we feel a lot of people in the world has that kind of feeling of what? Being useless. Why? They're not being circulated. their gifts are not being used. They don't even know what their giftings are yet. Or people want to copy other people's giftings. They don't have their own identity. They want to jump as high as Michael Jordan, or LeBron James now. No, who's I'm an oldie. So Michael Jordan, my examples like Michael Jordan, Yeah. So that, okay, so we have that problem. That's the reason why people are struggling with this. And sometimes we talk about this as a study. Many people don't see how serious these matters are as it really goes on in the world where we move around. Until somebody comes to you, or for example, you're a pastor, somebody comes to you and then opens up to you, and you look at that person and say, you look like a person who does not have any problem at all. But you've been carrying this inside yourself. That's the reason why there are many people around you you don't know are struggling, and suddenly something happens to them and you get shocked. We get surprised. Like, what happened? I never saw him as somebody struggling with this or that. And suddenly something tragic happens. Okay? So lack of feeling of usefulness. Okay? But like, this is a common thing. Like if you ask people, let's say, for example, a room filled with 100 people, you ask them, how many of you know exactly the reason why you exist? How many of you know what you were created for? There are so many people in that room who will not be able to point out the reason why they exist. Most of the time, again, it's like, that's the trend. Everybody's taking up nursing. They'll take up nursing. I remember like everybody's taking up, like, I remember when I was young, way back home, every lady was taking up commerce. It's like almost everybody was taking up, was taking up commerce. Remember that, Fab, in the Philippines? Yeah. So it's like what happens is, instead of really finding out from the Lord, what did you want me to do? Okay, we just copy a person who's rich, right? Because we feel like that's what success is. Somebody who's rich, somebody who's successful, somebody who's famous, somebody who's influential, or somebody who's fast, somebody who's strong. It's like anybody who's like extreme of the extremes, we copy. You know what?
Yeah.
That will cause you to be very insecure. That's why sometimes I say, like, is there really wisdom in watching like Instagram? I'm not hitting on it, right? Okay, but is there really wisdom in watching Instagram where you see that guy jump from one end to the other, like like jumping the entire like across something from one to the other, jumping from a very high place to the ground without hurting himself, right? Or jumping off a cliff or a mountain. Like I could not even drive on a high freeway without my body locking.
Right.
Like, yeah, I'm telling you, remember I told you about Andre? We went there. I had to pass 2 bridges. I had to pass 2 high bridges. You know what happens to my body? I program my mind. I fight it. I'm not gonna be scared. I'm gonna be okay. But I try to go to the fastest lane because it's farther from the edge of the bridge. And if the speed limit is 40 miles per hour, I'm driving 20. I'm driving 20 on a fast lane away from the edge of the bridge, and I didn't care what people say because my body has a tendency to lock. Like, it doesn't matter. And sometimes my family, they're so funny. They try to comfort you, like, we're going to eat later on. Like, you're going to be okay. My mentality is, don't touch me. Don't talk to me right now. I want to be on the zone, right? I want to be able to survive this. But that happens. I don't know why I don't know why I went there, but let's continue with the lesson. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to try to recall why we're there. Okay, but okay, lack of security, lack of usefulness. Continuation, the third one, the third parable. How many of you appreciated Ate Fab when she taught us like about the parable of the lost
Sheep.
No.
Lost what? Lost duck? There's no parable of the lost duck. Did somebody say lost duck? I misheard you, right? There's a parable of the lost son. We call it the prodigal son. By the way, prodigal son doesn't mean sinful son. It doesn't mean it. Prodigal means super luxurious or wasteful. That's what prodigal means. Okay. So the parable of the lost son. So this could go many ways. Okay. It depends on the angle you look at it. It could be a very complex title, but I went simple on this one. I'll explain it anyway. So it's not going to be difficult for us. Okay. So we don't misunderstand it. So I just entitled it Lack of Close Relationships. Lack of close relationships. But you could debate against that. You could say it's not that they lack close relationship. He had a father. He had a father. He had a brother. So it's not the lack of close relationships. It's probably the lack of access to the relationship. Okay. But somebody may say it's really not the lack of access because he had access. He just didn't want to go back. Okay. So it could go anyway, but we just settled with that right now, lack of close relationships. So you see that what happens? Why do you feel insecure when you somehow have this kind of complex, right? Because you feel like you made a mistake. Okay. You feel like you had something going on. Number one, you felt like you really already made a mistake, that because the prodigal son made a mistake, asking for his inheritance while his father was alive. Okay, I don't know how true, I haven't really dug deep in this one, but the theory is that it's almost suggestive of, I think Feb said this, right? It is almost in their culture suggestive of, I wish you were dead. Like coming from the prodigal, it may sound not too cruel, but coming from the experience of a father, what would you feel if your son somehow intimated or suggested that I want your money, not you, right? It'll hurt you as a parent. A lot of parents, by the way, experience that. Okay. So, but that's what the prodigal son did. Okay? Already made a mistake of making his father feel like he was worthless. Okay. Hurting his dad. And then being unfair to his brother. Okay. And then getting everything that he had. And then making a mistake again in his life of just going in a rampage of wild living, wild and sinful living. He spent it not wisely. He did not invest it. He didn't offer it to charity. He didn't do good things with it. He wasted it in sinful, riotous living. So you find yourself now in what condition? What happened to the prodigal son? Eventually, you keep spending the money you don't have, okay? Or you keep spending money and not having an input, everything is output. What's going to happen? You lose it. You will end up with that, okay? Was it Queen Elizabeth or Margaret Thatcher? Okay. It's okay. I'm not going to quote it. Some people may not want it. A lot of countries collapse. A lot of countries collapse because, remember, that's the reason why you don't keep on printing money. But a lot of countries collapse because they keep on spending what they actually don't have as a reserve. They don't have, it's supposed to be backed. Our money is supposed to be backed by gold. It's supposed to be backed by silver. It's supposed to be backed by tangible assets. So when you keep on printing a paper without any backing anymore, that's where your money loses value. Like, for example, let's say like the last 2 years we have, what do they say? We have an inflation of 9%, the biggest, right? So far, for how many years? Okay. Basically, if I'm earning $100 per hour, I just lost $30 of that. I'm only earning $70 an hour now. Okay. You may say, oh, that's still big, Pastor. What about if you're earning only $40 an hour? Okay, so you just lost 30% of that. So that's what, and then, so you keep on spending that when you don't have any more. That's a big mistake. Okay, so that's what the prodigal son had experienced. And what happens? What happens now when you lose what you have? Honestly. Okay, I'll tell you honestly, in my pastoring ministry, I've met people who have actually slept in their cars that I had to that my wife and I had to take into our home. Okay. Well, for those of you who are watching me now and saying, oh, I don't have a home right now, Pastor, can you take me in? My social service friend told us not to do it anymore.
Social services.
Yeah, we were advised never ever do it again because I think we're under a law now that if they don't want to leave, like if you help them for one, I don't know how true this is, but she works with the social services people. That if we ask somebody to sleep with us, and we have yeah, here you go, we got somebody here. We adopted her. Yeah. So we have families, we have people, individuals who we've actually stayed asked to stay with us. But my friend told me that if somebody you ask somebody to stay with you for one night and the person doesn't want to leave, by law, you can't kick them out.
Be careful.
Huh? So be careful. So you have to be, yeah, you can still go through the process though, but it's going to be a long process.
But the law of God is better. I mean, I don't,
Huh?
I said the law of God is better. You
Yeah,
know,
the law
God
of
is
God
on
is
your
better.
side. I mean, you get rid of the person, whether you should be out. I was saying that God's law is better, you know, because, you know, if you have God on your side,
Yeah,
I
get
mean,
rid of it.
God is bigger than the law.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know. That's my input.
yeah.
But
Okay, that's Elmo's input. Okay. So yeah, but I'm just saying that we all operate in wisdom. Okay, so I'm just saying that. But the reason why I said that, the reason why I said that again, the reason why I said that is because you don't want to come to this point that you've lost everything. You've lost your resources and you've lost your family. Because that's what happened to him. Okay. Sometimes losing your family for some people is okay, but not the resource as long as you have resources. Sometimes for people, losing the resources is okay as long as you have your family. But the prodigal, the reason why he felt very insignificant or worthless is because for him, he lost everything, family and resources. And what becomes the attitude of a person who feels insignificant and worthless? Okay. You come to this point, what happens to you? You look at yourself as what? I'm wretched. I made a mistake. I'm bad. I'm not worth anything. Nobody wants to accept me. Nobody wants to help me, not even my family. Okay, as I said, that's a very tragic point to get to because you feel like there's no more hope. Remember again, the reason why people keep living is because of the presence of hope. The moment hope is gone, people decide to take their lives. Okay, that's the reason why it's important that we learn this so we could share this to people. Okay, because what happened? I say it as a prodigal son complex, but it was an erroneous complex because he was operating based on the standard of the world where he was in, but not operating based on the standard of how his father operated. Again, these are two different things. There's a difference between living your life or living our lives based on the trend of the world or the practice of the world, as compared to living our lives based on the principles of our Father. For the world, you made a mistake, you ought to be punished, you deserve what you're getting. What he didn't know, and even the prodigal son had that mentality. There was insecurity and feeling of unworthiness in him until he realized something when he finally did what he had to do. Right? He had that sense. What did he tell himself? Did he tell himself, I'm going to go back to the Father?
I made a mistake.
Huh?
He says, I made a mistake.
Yeah, he came to his senses. By the way, that came to his senses is the very same essence of the word repentance. Okay? So he came to his senses and he said, my father, like if my father serves, he saw the scenario of, okay, it's 9:31. 9:31, that means to say we have to end right here, right now. Okay, but did you learn a little bit of something today?
Yes.
Okay, praise God. Okay, so it's 9:31. I'm giving it back. I'm going to stop the recording. So we're going to continue. We're going to continue the lesson, not this Wednesday. We're going to have a guest teacher next Wednesday. Okay, for Elmo and Michelle and Marissa, that we're actually the goal that we have in Bible studies is actually don't get scared. Okay, but basically our goal is what Paul told Timothy. Okay, we just to pass on whatever it is, to pass on to someone that they may be able to pass it on to someone. So our goal is for you to be able to like do what I do. Okay, to sit here or stand over there and be able to teach as well. Okay, so we're gonna stop the recording and pass it on to Ati Bell.
All right, let's all stand as we close in word of prayer.